I collapsed in the Kroger on Peachtree Street, right between the cereal aisle and the pharmacy counter. One moment I was reaching for my usual box of oatmeal, the next I was on the cold linoleum floor with concerned faces hovering above me. The paramedics arrived within minutes, their voices urgent as they checked my vitals and loaded me onto a stretcher. "Ma'am, what medications are you currently taking?" the EMT asked as we sped toward Emory University Hospital. "Carboplatinum," I said weakly, reciting the name I'd memorized over 10 years. "For my lung cancer. Stage 3. Dr. Weinstein says I'm responding well to treatment." The EMT frowned and made a note, but said nothing more. At the emergency room, Dr. Jennifer Park, a young woman with kind eyes and steady hands, examined me thoroughly. She ordered blood work, a chest X-ray, and a CT scan. I'd been through these procedures countless times with Dr. Weinstein, but something felt different here. The machines looked newer, the technicians asked different questions. 2 hours later, Dr. Park returned with my charts, her expression puzzled and concerned. "Mrs. Thompson," she began carefully, sitting in the plastic chair beside my bed, "I need to ask you some questions about your medical history. According to these tests, you don't have cancer. You never had cancer. Your lungs are clear, your blood work is normal for a woman your age. Who told you that you had lung cancer?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I fumbled in my purse for the business card I'd carried for a decade, my hands trembling as I handed it to her. "Dr. Marcus Weinstein," I whispered. "He's been treating me for 10 years. Stage 3 lung cancer, he said. Monthly treatments, quarterly scans. He saved my life." Dr. Park studied the card, her frown deepening. "Mrs. Thompson, I've never heard of this doctor. And this address." She pulled out her phone, typing quickly. "This building was demolished 8 years ago to make way for a shopping center." That night, lying in my hospital bed as they kept me for observation, I stared at the ceiling and tried to process what Dr. Park had told me. No cancer. Never had cancer. 10 years of treatments, 10 years of fear, 10 years of preparing for death, all based on a lie. But how was that possible? I remembered the diagnosis clearly. It was December 2014, just after my husband Robert died. I'd been coughing for weeks, grieving and exhausted. Dr. Weinstein's office had called, saying I needed to come in immediately to discuss my test results. He'd sat across from his mahogany desk, my X-rays clipped to the lightboard behind him, pointing to dark spots that he said were tumors. "Stage 3 lung cancer," he'd said gravely. "Aggressive, but treatable with immediate chemotherapy." I'd been terrified, alone, and desperate to believe there was hope. When he'd outlined the treatment plan, monthly infusions, quarterly scans, a strict medication regimen, I'd agreed to everything. What choice did I have? The next morning, Dr. Park returned with a colleague, Dr. Michael Chen from the oncology department. "Mrs. Thompson," Dr. Chen said gently, "we've been reviewing your case. Can you tell us exactly what treatments you've been receiving from Dr. Weinstein?" I described everything in detail. The monthly trips to his clinic on Buckhead Avenue, the IV drips that made me nauseous, the pills I took daily at home, the scans that showed the cancer was stable but required continued treatment. Dr. Chen and Dr. Park exchanged glances. "Mrs. Thompson," Dr. Chen said carefully, "the address you gave us for Dr. Weinstein's clinic, that's been a Starbucks for the past 5 years." After my release from the hospital, I drove to Buckhead Avenue with a determination I hadn't felt in years. Dr. Park was right. The address I'd been visiting monthly was indeed a Starbucks. But that was impossible. I had clear memories of the clinic, the waiting room with its outdated magazines, the receptionist named Karen who always asked about my granddaughter. Confused, I sat in my car and pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found Dr. Weinstein's number. I called, expecting to hear Karen's familiar voice. Instead, a gruff male voice answered. "Yeah?" "I'm looking for Dr. Weinstein's office," I said. "Lady, you got the wrong number. This is Tony's auto shop." I hung up, my heart racing. I drove home and went straight to my filing cabinet, pulling out 10 years' worth of medical records. Each appointment summary was printed on official-looking letterhead. Each prescription was properly formatted. Each scan report was detailed and technical. But now I looked more carefully. The letterhead had no medical board license number. The prescription bottles, which I'd saved religiously, had no pharmacy information. And the scan reports? I Googled some of the medical terminology. Half of it wasn't real. That evening, my daughter Linda called from Savannah. I hadn't planned to tell her about the hospital visit, but something in her voice made me open up. "Mom, what do you mean you don't have cancer?" she asked, her voice rising with each word. "You've been fighting cancer for 10 years. We've planned our lives around your treatments, your prognosis. Are you telling me it was all fake?" "I don't know what I'm telling you," I admitted. "But the doctors at Emory ran every test imaginable. They say I'm perfectly healthy." There was a long silence. Then Linda said something that chilled me to the bone. "Mom, do you remember how much Dad's life insurance was?" $400,000, I said. "Why?" "And how much have you spent on cancer treatment over the past 10 years?" I'd never calculated it exactly, but between the monthly treatments, the medications, and the quarterly scans, maybe 300,000, give or take? "Mom," Linda said quietly, "I think someone's been stealing Dad's life insurance money." The next morning, I gathered every pill bottle from my medicine cabinet and drove to the Walgreens near my house. The pharmacist, a young man named David who'd always been helpful, looked puzzled when I set the bottles on the counter. "Mrs. Thompson, where did you get these?" he asked, examining the labels. "My oncologist, Dr. Weinstein. I've been taking them for years." David opened one of the bottles and shook a few pills into his palm. They were small, white, and unmarked. He pulled out a reference book and began flipping through pages. "Ma'am," he said finally, "these aren't cancer medications. They're not any kind of medication. These are lactose tablets, basically milk sugar. They sell them at health food stores as digestive aids." My legs went weak. "That's impossible. These cost $300 a month. My insurance covers most of it, but I've been paying $50 copays for years." David's expression darkened. "Ma'am, someone's been committing insurance fraud. And if they've been billing your insurance for chemotherapy drugs while giving you sugar pills, that's a federal crime." I left Walgreens in a daze. Back at home, I called my insurance company, Aetna, and asked to speak with their fraud department. After being transferred 3 times, I reached investigator Sarah Mills. "Mrs. Thompson," she said after I'd explained the situation, "I'm pulling up your account now. According to our records, Dr. Marcus Weinstein has billed us $347,000 over the past 10 years for your cancer treatment. Monthly chemotherapy infusions, specialty medications, advanced imaging studies. This is one of our highest cost cases." "But I never had cancer," I said. "The doctors at Emory confirmed it yesterday." There was a pause. "Mrs. Thompson, are you filing a formal fraud complaint?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I want to know who this man is and how many other people he's hurt." Sarah Mills worked fast. Within 48 hours, she'd involved the FBI's healthcare fraud unit, and I found myself sitting across from Agent Rebecca Torres in her downtown Atlanta office. Agent Torres was perhaps 40, with sharp eyes and the demeanor of someone who'd seen every type of scam imaginable. "Mrs. Thompson," she began, "Dr. Marcus Weinstein isn't his real name. We've been tracking him for 3 years across multiple states. His real name is Mark Rosenberg, and he's wanted for medical fraud in Florida, Tennessee, and North Carolina." She pulled out a thick file. "His pattern is consistent. He targets recently widowed women, usually after they've suffered a loss and are vulnerable. He sets up fake clinics, creates elaborate medical histories, and bills insurance companies for treatments that never happen." "How many victims?" I asked. "In Georgia alone, 17 that we know of. Nationally, we estimate over 60 women over the past 15 years. Agent Torres showed me photographs of other women, all roughly my age, all widows, all diagnosed with various cancers by Dr. Weinstein. Some had been told they had breast cancer, others ovarian or colon cancer. The details varied, but the pattern was always the same: Fake diagnosis, fake treatments, real insurance money. Mrs. Thompson, we've been trying to build a case against him for months, but he's careful. He only takes cash for co-pays, he uses different names and locations, and he disappears before we can track him down. But you might be our break. How? You have an appointment with him next week, don't you? I checked my calendar. Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Agent Torres smiled grimly. We're going to keep that appointment. The plan was straightforward but nerve-wracking. I would wear a wire to my appointment with Dr. Weinstein, acting as if nothing had changed. Agent Torres and her team would monitor from a van outside, ready to move in once they had enough evidence on tape. But first, we had to find him. It turned out Dr. Weinstein had been moving his operation every few months. The phone number I'd been calling was forwarded through a complex system that eventually reached his current location, a rented office space in a strip mall in Marietta, 30 minutes north of Atlanta. On Tuesday morning, Agent Torres fitted me with a small recording device, barely larger than a button, hidden under my blouse. Remember, she said, act normally. Ask the questions you'd usually ask. Let him talk. The more he says about your treatment and your prognosis, the stronger our case becomes. I drove to Marietta with my heart pounding. The strip mall was exactly as Agent Torres had described, a row of generic office spaces between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. The sign on the door read Peachtree Oncology Associates, but it looked temporary, like it could be taken down in minutes. I walked into the waiting room, and there was Karen, the receptionist I'd known for years. She looked up and smiled. "Mrs. Thompson, right on time. Dr. Weinstein is ready for you." The familiarity was almost overwhelming. How could this be fake when everything felt so real, so consistent? Dr. Weinstein's office was exactly as I remembered. The mahogany desk, the diplomas on the wall, the light board for viewing x-rays. He looked up as I entered, his face showing the same compassionate concern it always did. "Margaret," he said warmly, using my first name as he always had. "How are you feeling? Any new symptoms since our last visit?" For the next 20 minutes, I sat through what I now realized was a carefully rehearsed performance. Dr. Weinstein examined my fake x-rays, nodded thoughtfully at my fake blood work, and adjusted my fake treatment plan. "The good news," he said, "is that your cancer remains stable. The carboplatinum is doing its job. We'll continue with the monthly infusions, and I'm increasing your daily medication dose." "Dr. Weinstein," I said carefully, "I've been doing some research online about my condition. I'm curious about the long-term prognosis for stage 3 lung cancer." His expression shifted slightly, and I saw something I'd never noticed before, a flicker of calculation. "Margaret, I've told you before, every case is different. You've responded remarkably well to treatment. Some patients in your situation live for many, many years." "How many years exactly?" "Well, that's impossible to say." "Dr. Weinstein," I interrupted, my voice stronger now, "I went to the emergency room last week. They ran tests. They said I don't have cancer." The change in his demeanor was instant and startling. The warm, compassionate doctor disappeared, replaced by someone cold and angry. "Margaret, you can't trust emergency room doctors. They don't understand complex cases like yours. If you stop treatment now, you'll be dead within months." "But the tests—" "The tests are wrong," he snapped, then seemed to catch himself. "I mean, they're not equipped to properly evaluate your specific type of cancer. You need to trust me. I've been treating you successfully for 10 years. I leaned forward. "Dr. Weinstein, what would happen if I never had cancer at all, hypothetically?" He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact moment he realized I knew. "You little bitch," he said quietly. "You've been talking to the insurance company." Those words, "you little bitch," spoken by a man I'd trusted with my life for a decade, were caught clearly on the recording device. Agent Torres later told me they were the most damning evidence she'd ever collected. Within seconds of those words, FBI agents burst through the office doors. Dr. Weinstein, Mark Rosenberg, tried to run but was tackled before he reached the back exit. Karen, the receptionist, turned out to be his wife and accomplice. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of their operation. They'd been running fake cancer clinics across the Southeast for over 15 years, targeting vulnerable widows and stealing millions from insurance companies. The treatments I'd received were nothing more than saline solution. The medications were sugar pills bought in bulk online. But the cruelest part wasn't the money. It was the psychological torture. For 10 years, I'd lived in fear of my own death. I'd made decisions based on having limited time, turned down opportunities, said goodbye to friends I thought I'd never see again. They hadn't just stolen my money, they'd stolen a decade of my life. Mark Rosenberg was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. His wife received 10 years. The investigation led to the arrest of 12 other people involved in the scheme across 4 states. I recovered most of my money through insurance settlements and victim restitution funds. But more importantly, I got something back that I thought was gone forever: my future. At 67, I finally started living again. I took the trip to Europe that Robert and I had always planned. I learned to paint. I joined a hiking group and discovered I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Sometimes I think about the 10 years I lost to fear and fake illness. But then I remember that I'm alive, healthy, and free from the shadow of cancer that never existed in the first place. The real tragedy isn't what Mark Rosenberg stole from me. It's what I almost let him take: hope, joy, and the simple pleasure of waking up each morning without counting down the days until death. I'm Margaret Thompson. I'm 67 years old. And for the first time in a decade, I'm not dying of cancer, because I never had it to begin with.